We've got the whole crew together as we cover Ohio State with our instant analysis from Ohio State.
There's something that doesn't feel right.
Unbelievable effort from him today. Is E.J. Liddell going to crack the first team All Big Ten?
I think he can be the guy. I'm not trying to start a quarterback controversy.
He seems to have the durability. He certainly has the toughness. This is the question on a lot of people's minds here. Welcome to Buckeye Breakdown. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to Indianapolis. We just wrapped up Big Ten Media Day. Buckeyes illustrated with our live streaming coverage after Big Ten Media Day. Day one concluded here from Indianapolis, Indiana, the future home of the Big Ten tournament and Big Ten championship. I'm Brendan Gulick along with Brett Hiltbrand. Brett, a fun afternoon. Certainly, got a chance to get a feel for what this conference could look like. I know there's a lot of excitement around the Ohio State side coming into the year, especially with guys like E.J. Liddell and Kyle Young coming back. I think Coach Holtmann knows he's got some young, pieces to this team they need to figure out. But I think he's got a heck of a lot of things to be excited about coming into the year.
100%. First and foremost, one of the few times where your backdrop is actually better than mine, which is nice for you. It's a front row seat to all the action. But yeah, this is a veteran group coming back, right? And I think in a lot of ways that is a core tenet or pillar of what Chris Holtmann is doing at Ohio State and wanting to do consistently, in that you add pieces to veteran guys to get as good as you possibly can year in and year out. The idea obviously being that you don't necessarily drop at any point season to season, but you keep progressing and moving forward. I think when we get into the nitty gritty a little bit of their schedule, their non-conference schedule specifically, and how this team will sometimes match up, that might be a little bit of an issue in some specific games. But in general, I think it's an exciting year for Ohio State because of that front part of the season. And what they're doing is they're trying to make a big statement to the rest of college basketball, saying, we are not dodging anyone right now. We're playing the best we possibly can play as far as opponent is concerned, and we have a group that we're confident in. So it's exciting.
And Coach Holtmann talked a little bit about that schedule, knowing that, when you've got Duke and you've got Kentucky, those are going to be big headline non-conference games, and everybody's going to talk about them. But he said, look, top to bottom, non-conference, he said, this is absolutely the hardest schedule that Ohio State has put together during their tenure now as they start year 5. He was very complimentary of Seton Hall, of Xavier. He said Akron is a very good mid-major program. Those two games, Duke and Kentucky, catch a lot of attention, but he said, we need to learn a lot about our toughness and a lot about our ability to handle adversity early in the season, because the league is good, right? That's not a big surprise. And they feel like it's not just about establishing some ranking criteria points and things like that outside of conference play. They want to push themselves because winning a Big Ten title is something this team and this program really, really want to do. And they've come agonizingly close and just haven't been able to pull that off quite yet.
Yeah. And I think they're going to be set up, in a really good position to know exactly what they have come January. And if that's even a possibility, as far as winning a conference championship is concerned, right? And I think in many ways, your goal of the non-conference schedule, I think, is twofold. One, you're trying to figure out obviously what team you have, and kind of you have your base level day one, all ever present expectations, right? And then you use that non-conference schedule to then kind of influence a little bit of some of the expectations that might change season in and season out. And then the other part is to try not to lose, the season at that point. You don't want your season to basically be over before you even get into conference play. And so, and I think, a program like Ohio State, which is, definitely not a blue blood, but probably that next tier down, can find itself in a position where, essentially they have to kind of pick and choose their battles a little bit, and definitely want to show as much as they possibly can, but not necessarily bite off more than they can chew. And it's a tough position to be in, and I think it takes a coach with guts to schedule the way Ohio State is scheduled. And I think in a lot of ways, that is probably the best, kind of way you could define Chris Holtmann, is that no matter what, the dude's got guts, and he's going to run the group out there and have them prepared in many ways, regardless of their talent level. And I think that's a good thing. And I think that's what you want if you're an Ohio State fan.
I mean, he was asked point blank, hey, is this schedule, like, at points do you lie in bed at night going, why did I do this? And he laughed. He goes, yeah, thanks for the reminder. I do. It's just, you can't shy away from who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. And if you want to be at your best, you better see the best competition you can see throughout the course of the year. And especially with a young team that has a boatload of talent, but maybe needs some of that to get ready for Big Ten play. Look, reflecting back on last season, Ohio State's regular season for a while there was awfully good.
Yeah.
And then the last 2 weeks hit, and 4 consecutive frustrating losses to close the regular season felt like the team was limping into the Big Ten tournament, both theoretically and actually physically beat up. And then went into the Big Ten tournament and ripped off this incredible run and darn near won the Big Ten championship.
Right.
And obviously everybody knows how the year ended. So there were these like high highs and low lows, some frustrating moments and some exhilarating moments for this team last year. And I think the ability to play some games that you really have to focus on developing your toughness early in the year, it's going to make a difference for this team down the stretch.
100%. And I think it's also a little bit ingenious in how some of those games are scheduled. Right. And I think the ones that I'm circling in my mind are obviously Duke, Kentucky, and Xavier, and how those games are played. You obviously get Duke at home, which is awesome. You go to Vegas and play Kentucky out there, which presents its own problems and own set of circumstances, NCAA tournament like, right? And then you have to go to Xavier down in Cincinnati and play in an environment that I think is underrated across the entire landscape of college basketball. That's a fun place to play and watch games. And that, I think, will intangibly wise will just pay off in the long run for Ohio State in many ways, regardless of what the outcome of the game is, final score is concerned. Obviously, you don't want to lose any of those games, but I think you would learn so much about your team, and that will pay off in conference season, and then obviously when it comes time to go into that conference tournament and NCAA tournament. But it's exciting, and I think in a lot of ways that the quote you mentioned about Chris Holtmann is him in a nutshell, right? That like uber competitive, forward facing, front facing guy, but at the same time, not afraid of a little bit of introspection as well, candid introspection, which is something I think wink, wink, nudge, nudge. College football coaches, a little bit of that wouldn't kill you. But that it's to me, it's him in a nutshell, and why I think he is the premier guy to lead this program.
I'm excited to watch this league this year because,
for sure,
there's 100%. Obviously some guys that moved on, that, spotlighted, highlighted, headlined this conference, with a league that is as good as regularly as the Big Ten is. You're going to have some new faces every year try to take center stage, but you still have some guys that really made a big splash last year. Obviously, Kofi Coburn is back down at Illinois, and they're a legitimate title threat again. Hunter Dickinson was a dude last year for Michigan. Yep. He's going to be a challenge.
And Michigan got better.
They did, and that's a really scary thought, frankly. Their incoming freshman class was crazy good. I think Purdue has a very good chance to win the conference championship this year. And they're kind of the school that I don't think is getting enough attention because there's so much attention being paid to Illinois and Michigan, and Purdue absolutely is right on that same footing. The depth in the league continues to be good. I don't know if it's truly 14 deep in terms of really good teams. But I think there's also this collective emphasis from what I was able to gather today from different players and coaches. Last year, for as good as this league was, it wasn't a great March. There were a lot of Big Ten teams that did not make it to the second weekend. And I think there is a concerted effort that, look, sometimes you draw a tough opponent. But there are some teams here that feel they've really got a chance to make a deep run in March, and that mentality for them needs to start now in October.
I think if you were to do a top 10, like it's called like a way too early top 10, right? In college basketball, Purdue's a top 10 team and Michigan's a top 10 team, right? And then probably just on the outside is Illinois. And so one of the things that I think as a college basketball neutral, I think that's super awesome about this Big Ten season, as opposed to some in the past, is that like week in and week out, there will probably be a marquee Big Ten basketball game every single week from, turn of the year all the way to the tournament, which is going to be awesome. And I don't think, because it's like that, where it's maybe you're only maybe like running the gauntlet like 1 week, and then you have like lesser opponents, for maybe 2 or 3, and then you play another really good team. I don't think the Big Ten will beat up on itself this season like it did a year ago. And then as a byproduct of that, I don't believe, and again, obviously this is entirely, projection, I don't believe you're going to see the same, struggles come tournament time where everybody was hurt, everybody was gassed, no one had any legs because of what that conference schedule was like for the better part of like 3 months in the Big Ten. I don't necessarily see that, but there is a very top-heavy league right now, and I think there are going to be some fun games. Like the Tuesday night games are going to be out of this world good in the Big Ten for sure.
Let's talk a little bit about the backcourt before we wrap up, because we've only got another couple minutes here. And by the way, excuse my lack of energy. Yeah, lack of energy, trying to be respectful of the still dozens of media members that are working not terribly far away. Otherwise, I'd be a lot more enthusiastic, I promise. The Ohio State backcourt is going to look a little bit different this year because the 2 starters that they lost were both guards, C.J. Walker and obviously in Dwayne Washington Jr. Jamari Wheeler comes in. He's known a heck of a lot more for his defense than his offense. He's capable offensively for sure, but this kid is really scrappy on the defensive end of the floor, and he's going to be a problem for a lot of schools. Michi Johnson now has a full year, right? Last year was, I think, a great ingratiation period for him, a way to just get a feel for what this whole thing is like. And, they're considering this to be his freshman year because it's a full season for him. A lot of people want to know what's the latest with Malachi Branham. Coach Holtmann said, look, I don't put expectations on freshmen. They run their own race. He said, sometimes they run really fast and look good. Sometimes they look like freshmen. That's kind of the nature of it, but the talent is clearly there. Could he compete this year and see some time? Potentially. We'll see. This team needs to find some stability in the backcourt. Jimmy Sotos is healthy after his surgery last year. He is going to compete and try to get some playing time. Obviously, Justin Arns, needs to get hot again. What he can look like when he's at his best. He had some frustrating moments last season too, but in talking with him last week at Ohio State's media day, you get the sense that he's rejuvenated and ready to make a fun run through the year. So I think the guard play is probably where Ohio State, has the most question marks, but feels like they've got the talent to figure this thing out before the season gets going.
I'm gonna throw a preseason projection at you here, a prediction. I think, given Ohio State's lack of depth at guard right now, that you will see Ohio State go big and long on several different points throughout the season. In fact, I would not be shocked if you see matchup 2-3 zone from Ohio State at a couple different points this year, straight out of, Syracuse, Jim Boeheim style, just simply because, the depth is kind of in that, like that wing 3/4 hybrid. And then at the 5, right. And to be able to kind of realize that you're probably not scoring 80, 85 points a game and know kind of what you have personnel wise. And so maybe try slow the game down a little bit and be a little bit more methodical. But I think in general, one of the most exciting things about college basketball for me is I love to see guard progression and how guys essentially make jumps from, their first bits of experience, and if they stick around, then obviously the years beyond that. And I think Michi is a good example of a guy that I'm really so eager to see kind of the jump that he has because his floor is so high. And then obviously the ceiling is stratospheric for him. He'll be super fun to watch this year. And it's a guy that I think since he's an Ohio guy too, I think he has a little bit more of a burden on his shoulders as far as expectation. And I think that's something that, his family has prepared him for since he was probably like 10 or 11, if not even younger. And so I'm extremely excited for that, and to be able to watch him. But this Ohio State's team is going to be super long, and they're going to have to grind out some games for sure. And, the question marks at guard are not necessarily a bad thing, because it means you can at times throw caution to the wind a little bit and on offense. And that should be fun to watch as well.
While there are question marks at guard, there is, some real solid, backbone of the team type guys in EJ Liddell and in Kyle Young in the front court. Chris Holtmann talked about the willingness to let both of them let their process to return just sort of play out on their own timeline. Both have obviously chosen to come back, and maybe for what end up being similar reasons, although, EJ probably has more of an NBA future than Kyle does potentially. But man, I'm telling you what, Kyle Young last year was the absolute heartbeat of this team. And when he wasn't healthy, man, it hurt. The Buckeyes need him on the floor. He is such a vital component for the toughness and the attitude of this team, in a league that feels like a boxing match sometimes, where you gotta, it's almost like football, right? You have to like mentally impose your will and show that you can absorb the physicality of playing in the post, especially against guys like last year, Luka Garza and Kofi and Hunter and players like that. Meanwhile, EJ has actually slimmed down a little bit. He had this big smile on his face today, and he said, I actually got a couple compliments on my physique. He's been trying to thin out a little bit. Last year, he primarily played the 4, but he was primarily guarded by the opposing 5. And so you saw him, have some really effective moments in the mid-range shooting game. I would hope that continues to develop for him. He told us last week and then reiterated it today that basically the message from NBA scouts was just keep getting better in all areas of the game. There's not a glaring weakness in the way he plays. They just want to continue to see some higher percentages. So he's trying to be a little bit more well-rounded. EJ plays with as much heart as anybody in America. He is so much fun to watch. The joy is contagious. And having those two guys be the staple of this team this year, I think is going to be a really, really key component for helping the program along, because they've got some young players that are going to need to fill those roles in the next couple of years.
Yeah, when Kyle was out, the Ohio State had no edge at times, and I think in Big Ten play you have it or perish, and at times we saw that. Offensively, I think the more Kyle is physical in and around the basket, say like plus or minus 8 to 10 feet from the hoop, the better it actually then suits EJ beyond that. And I think we'll see him stretch out in mid-range game a little bit more this year. I think we'll see him probably shoot more threes, because I would expect a lot of foul line extended ball screens for him, top of the key ball screens for him, in trying to get, essentially like a half court mismatch, get a switch and then go from there. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be a fascinating, year. And I think for EJ specifically, it's got kind of like, almost like Evan Turner, like expectations here offensively for him. I don't think he has obviously the same type of NBA future that Evan had when his time, but I think offensively the majority of the scoring burden is now on him, and in ways that it hasn't had and hasn't been required in his Ohio State career to date. So watching kind of him, handle that, absorb that, and then, output from there will be fascinating to watch. I think he's the type of guy that actually like handles that better than most. I would expect Chris Holtmann and his coaching staff know that, and that's something that they're super eager to see, knowing that they don't necessarily have to spoon feed him a little bit. It can, everything can kind of be out there in the open, and then just let him go and do his thing. And I think that's a good thing for Ohio State.
Sure, it's fun to be talking hoops again. Can't believe that the Buckeyes are 6 practices into the year already. It is October the 7th, and they've practiced starting Thursday last week. We are ready to go, and in just a couple of weeks now, the Buckeyes will be on the floor, and it's going to be go time. So really excited for what should be a fun year. Fun to kick things off here in Indianapolis, where hopefully the Buckeyes have another lengthy run coming up this March, and we will certainly cover it as best we can along the way. We've got some fun things planned here on Buckeyes Now. We can't wait to tell you about. Those are just around the corner. For Brett Hiltbrand, I'm Brendan Gulick, live from Indianapolis at Big Ten Media Days. Hope you enjoyed our coverage. We've got plenty more to come. BuckeyesNow.com. Hope to see you on our YouTube channel again real soon.